So today we're going to do a quick sketch for a Christmas card idea as requested by one of my lovely subscribers, Snowman. So I think the request was trying to paint in the shadows and getting it look right, so we're going to have a little go at that. So snowman, what's the first thing you need for a snowman? Well, we all know this, it's snow, isn't it? So we could have a large snowman in the middle here, or we could have a small snowman with sort of like a view behind him. So I'm going to go sort of something like a nice dumpy snowman here, and just doing it very, very lightly. Just a rough shape. Maybe I'll have a little hat on him. Don't know which way his hands and everything else are going yet. There we go, something like that. His buttons down that way, and then his eyes, etc. will be there. So that's the snowman. So in the background I could perhaps have, let's see, let's have a little hill shape. And then that gives us opportunities to do things in the background, otherwise we wouldn't be able to. So the first thing to remember is that snow does not have to be white. In fact, snow is generally not white because it's reflecting the colours around it. And this is your painting, this is your card. So realistically, you can do whatever you want on here. You do not have to be following a theme or a colour. Some of the nicest ways to paint snow are with blue and pink, funnily enough. So to start with, I'm just going to drop in a nice, gentle, coolish sky. So cool means this blue has got a cool bias to it, so it makes you feel like it's cooler. It's more going towards yellow and green than it is going towards pink. So this particular blue, cerulean blue, has got a nice sort of granulation going on there straight away, so I won't touch any more of that. I could take clouds and things out, but I don't really want the focus to be in the sky. So then dropping down into the hill behind, switch to a slightly warmer blue because it's coming forward, and this is ultramarine, which has got slightly more pink bias. That little bit of dry brush there is maybe suggesting some distant snow drifts on there. Now the trick is to not paint your snowman, is go round the snowman. You could paint this wet paint onto wet paper, but just for this instance I'm doing wet onto dry, so it's given me a chance to do some dry brushing, which may or may not work. Once you get a theme for your cards, you can find you can churn them out one after the other with a similar sort of feel to them. So because this was wet on dry, there are some hard edges in there, but that's not necessarily a problem. Just lift out some of those, dab them off. In fact, it can be a way of adding light in to an area. So if, say, you wanted the light there coming over that hill, something like that. Oops, and accidentally lifted out a bit of a cloud there, so might as well do some more. Just gently with that towel, keep turning it. It's like a cloud coming over the horizon or something. So then I would just do a little bit of crimson, alizarin crimson, etc., to suggest a little bit of snow here. Oh, that's scary, isn't it? Look at that, that's not snow. How can that be snow? Now adding in a little bit of the ultramarine blue on this side, because this is probably going to be the side that the snowman has his shadow. There we go. Just a little bit of dark around the edges to vignette your painting. And then we'll just let that dry. You could, if you wanted to, at this point, before it dries, you could add a tiny bit of salt in various areas to add some texture You could even add it into the sky to suggest some snow coming down right now. But whatever you want to do, you don't have to have any salt on it if you don't want to. So let that dry. A really nice grey is to use ultramarine blue, which is over here. And you can't quite see that, let me just show you. Ultramarine blue with some burnt sienna. It's a classic grey combination, so that's like a reddy orange colour with the blue, which makes a lovely grey. So we're now going to just, whilst this is pretty dry, I've just got a little bit of fiddling around the snowman to do. So I am suggesting here that behind him is some trees or some sort of shrubby things. They don't have to be trees, you could make them into Christmas trees. I've just gone for grey. You might want them to be more obviously tree coloured, a dark green, fir green, anything like that. But it's entirely up to you. You could use black or grey. You might find that that does tend to be a little bit flat when it's dry, which is why it's quite nice to mix your own grey up. You get less of that, a bit more interest. So fir trees is literally squiggle with a little dot on the end. There you go, just go for it. Again, we're doing a Christmas card, we're not doing a masterpiece, so don't think you've got to spend hours on it to get it right. Just do what you need to do and then move on to something else. Now obviously I'm going super fast here because otherwise you'd all fall asleep, but you would take a little bit more time and care, and yours will be way better than mine because you've done that. So I'm just going to carry on working these trees and remembering to paint around my snowman. That's now dry. I've got some nice shapes from the salt here in the sky and on the ground. Salt is brilliant when you're doing snow paintings, a little bit here as well. Something you can also add in, if you have it, is iridescent medium. Now some paints actually come, they're labelled as iridescent, but if you like the effect, and because obviously that's another paint you've got to buy, you could actually have this and add that to any of your paints to give them a little bit of a sheen. So I haven't actually used this before, so I'm going to just pop a little bit of that into some pink that I've got on the go. Whoops, that was way too much. The idea being that you try different things out if you've got them. If you haven't got them, you don't necessarily need to go and buy anything until maybe you know you want to, otherwise you'll end up with absolutely loads. So here we've got the snowman. He's not got anything on him as such yet, but thinking about how is he going to be shaped, I'm going to imagine the light's coming from here. It's just very loosely. He's not a perfect snowman. I'm going to add some pink onto him, just in the sort of the way that the shape would perhaps be. Then I'm going to rinse my brush, dampen it, not too wet, and drag some of that colour away across him. As you can see what I've just done there, and along the bottom. At that point I would then drop in some of the ultramarine blue with a touch of that grey we had earlier along the bottom of him while it's still wet. Let that go back up into the snowman and maybe around the back slightly, just to give you an idea that there's a shadow there. Using the same mix, then take that shadow off down to one side, away from the snowman. Doesn't have to be exact, doesn't have to be accurate, just make a shadow. So So you've got light. If you've overdone the paint or you've overdone the grey, squeeze your brush and lift it out. This will spoil some of the effects in the paint, but sometimes you've gone too far. It's best thing to do is to lift it out again. So a squeezed, clean, dry brush. There we go. Keep the edges soft. Make sure you keep some light in there, like so. And then we let that dry. Pretty dry. So I now need to just try and get myself a smaller brush. Going back to what we've got here, we've got some white highlights here, and we've got the Snowman who's got less white on than he used to have. So in a way, these are taken away from him. So we've got a nice blue up here. I don't really want to be adding any new colours at this point. So we go back into that blue, cerulean blue, and just literally cover up these white areas. So I've done that wet on dry, which obviously will leave some hard edges, but you can just soften them away. And now the impact of that white is not so dramatic, and it's brought the colour of the sky into the base of the painting and suggested there's some ridges and furrows going on here around where the snow is. So if I'm being critical, I've probably taken too much of the whites away, but yeah, I've got lots of things going on, so I'm quite happy with that. So just going to let that dry. In the meantime, pick up our slightly smaller brush and go back into the colours that we had previously, which is the Alizarin Crimson. And now, if you're going to do something like a scarf or something, make sure your paint is a lot thicker. I've got a little hair there. So if he's going to have a scarf, I might have the scarf coming down this side, like so. It's a bit of a big scarf, isn't it? Never mind. And then have it going around his neck. Very simple, stylized. And then to lift that a little bit, I put some of that blue in again, maybe even a hint of another blue, just a bit more bluey green, slightly more than the first one. Make sure it's nice and strong. So you're just giving a little bit of interest here. Oops, lost my colour there. So I wouldn't, you could do like orange and whatever you fancy there, but you have to be careful you don't add something too new too soon and literally just take over your whole picture. So this is a slightly overdone scarf. Let's just lift that out a little bit, that's better. But I've kept a cool bluey green in his scarf, and I've kept the pink in his scarf, so I haven't really added anything particularly new. So now I will mix up that lovely grey again, but this time much stronger and thicker. So we're definitely double cream, bordering on the honey, because we don't want this mix to be watery, we want it to be quite strong. You could again use black for this, or grey, Payne's grey, if you've got that and you prefer it, rather than mixing your own greys. And then it's just a case of thinking, right, I need an eye, I need some buttons down the front, as many or as few as you wish. And now of course he's got arms. They could use a fine liner pen for all of what we're doing here, which we've used before. So if you fancy doing fine lining, go for it. But this particular card I'm just sticking to watercolour. So the pen would show up slightly better than what we've got here, but it's just a watercolour card, so I'm not going to worry about it. So that's quite nice. Buttons I don't mind if they're strong, so we all know what's missing, don't we? Where's his mouth and where's his nose? So let's see if we can get his mouth in, which is the point of a rigger brush. Whoa, that's small and very fiddly. This is not a good painting to loosen up on. So what would I do his nose in? I could get a brand spanking new orange and stick it in there, but realistically I'm trying to keep this painting the colours I've already got. So I need to go and get some burnt sienna, which is how I made the grey earlier, and then we're just going to just try and see what that looks like, because it is essentially an orange. Yep, happy with that one. Let's just show you that. So it's an orange there, but it's just burnt sienna. And now I've got his hat. Now I don't really want to cover up completely all the colour, the white, but I don't want it to be particularly stand out. So I'm just going to do a blue hat and a line or two either side. Maybe a little bit of a highlight left on the top, like so. There we go. You could soften that if you wanted to. I've got quite a lot of paint on there. Just lift some of that off. Again, you could line this once you finish. You could go back over it with a pen. So I can now see that shimmer in this pink that I put onto the snowman. So yeah, so that's quite a fussy version. Let's get him dry. That's all done. So when you've got your watercolour kits, whoops, and all your sticky tape, quite often you will see a white in your kit. This is known as Chinese white. Personally, I do not use that. I buy something called gouache or gouache, depending on what you want to say, which is an opaque watercolour. I've just mixed it with a little bit of water here. I find this is way easier than trying to work up Chinese white, which is not that opaque anyway. It's up to you. A tube of white gouache or gouache will not cost you very much money. If you think you're going to use it, it's worth it. If you're not sure, try your Chinese white, but try and make it up into a creamy, rich paste like this that will drip off your brush, because guess what we're going to do now? That's why the tape is still on. So you're going to tap all over, the foreground, everywhere. Then that then shows you that background fairly bland tree line has actually got a purpose. It just gives you a backdrop to add some white snow. So for me, the gouache is the perfect way to finish that painting off. There's all sorts of other ways you could do it, but that's the simplest way. If you want to try Chinese white, have a go, but probably won't be quite as opaque as that. So you could carry on, you could have more snow, as much or as little as you like. So you've got quite a lot of texture on there now. What with the salt, the speckling which we've done, you could always use a toothbrush with that. However, a toothbrush gives you a much finer speckling. So for this particular one, I would just use a brush tapped on your finger or on another brush, and then let that dry. So here's our snowman sitting in a snowstorm, surrounded by trees and some salt effects on the ground and in the sky, and you can see his shadow running across here, and he's lighter on this side. It's not a difficult painting to do, but if you try and copy me exactly, you'll struggle. So try and do your own idea. Obviously a darker background will show the snowman up better than a pale background. So other ways of using these techniques, when we use the two colours, there's a painting done completely in violet and burnt sienna. Well, we had the burnt sienna and the ultramarine, so the violet's just got a little bit of alizarin crimson added to that ultramarine blue. And there's no snow on this one. We've got rough paper, which helps with textures, and just a nice sort of stormy winter sky. Then this one, which is all about the salt in the sky, creating this amazing wintry scene. Again, it's that sort of pinky blue colour scheme, which works really well in my opinion for snow paintings. Then this is one I did many years ago. Two horses giving themselves a groom, and in the background you can see the same idea. We've got a lovely salt effect, and it's blue and pink. So try having a go without using your plain old white for snow. Mix up your colours and try your own colours. You might prefer your own colour mixes. Just keep the colours simple on one painting. Don't put everything you've got onto one painting. Just pick a simple colour scheme. It will always look nicer than if you throw everything at it. So I hope you enjoyed that. Happy painting, and see you all again on the next video. Bye for now.